So education is very much a journey of me. It needs to be a journey of we. And that's a real difference of mentality, mindset shift, that education needs to do more project work. So how can we bring connection, networking, collaboration, communication more into the mainstream framework of education? So that's the past, and the we is the future.
Hi there, I'm Bex Craig, and you're listening to the Not Just Anything podcast for women who want it whole. I hope you'll join me each week as we hear extraordinary stories from women around the world about how they've curated a whole life by design rather than by default. This week, I'm speaking to Abby Brody, who's the founder and CEO of MYX, which is a startup focused on revolutionising the higher education experience. Abby is a lifelong educator whose passion for supporting the next generation in their perpetual learning journey is really evident for all to see. She herself is a lifelong learner, and she brings a fresh perspective to what is needed to truly support the future of work by creating experiences for young adults to find their purpose and be what she describes as life ready. I can't wait for you to hear our conversation and also maybe start to think about your own journey of learning. Here we go. A very big warm welcome to Abby Brody, who's joining me from New York tonight even for you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so honored to be here with you. I'm excited.
Oh gosh, it's our honor. It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I know you have a lot of really fascinating insights to share and journeys to share. So maybe we can just get straight in. I always ask, as you would know, as you kindly shared that you've listened to a couple of podcasts, with a big question, which is really who is this person that we're going to invite into our living rooms or into our bedrooms this evening? So tell us a little bit about you and a bit about your story.
Yeah. So this person, this Abby Brody, is like all women wearing 100 different hats at all different times.
Yes.
But I really think of myself as an educator for life, which is very different than just an educator. I am a proud mother of a boy in remission from a long battle of cancer. So that takes up a lot of space in my life. And I am a warrior to bring my purpose, I believe, in life is to help bring education and meet the demands of today, because we're so far behind. So I've spent my entire career in education. I've taught every grade in K through 12 except second. And I am really passionate about helping people find their futures.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Warrior, purpose, a passion. I love all these words that you're using already. And what a full portfolio, as you said, what a big, busy life, lots of different hats. And so what is it about this educator for life for you? What is it about that?
So I became fascinated about where schooling ends and life begins. What are the skills that we learn in school and what do we actually need in life? And I started a deep dive into the research, which was quite depressing and daunting about how schools are failing kids. And we've heard all this, and we know the debts and all the crises. What I found really fascinating in my deep dive of research is that the real return on investment has very little to do of college, right? The traditional college model has very little to do with class and has a lot to do with the experience, the friendships, the networks, living on your own. And often I feel what's wrong with school is that it's an artificial setting that isn't quite informed by life. And that the educational journey that we've created and in the 1600s and haven't changed much is you do school, and then you get to live life. But doesn't it make more sense just from how you know and watching babies grow and how we know that people actually take in content and become human and find purpose and learn words and all those things is by trying things out and doing and falling and standing back up by the act of doing. So I'm really passionate about this saying it shouldn't be school versus life, because so many kids think, oh, should I go to school or should I go to work, straight to the workplace? It should be both. School and life, and the two should inform each other. So I believe that the ultimate teacher, right? And as you get further as an adulthood, I think every adult feels this way, at least in my research, schooling had very little to do with the lessons that make them. It's more of the education of life and their friends, their families, experiences. Travel in particular has a very long educational value in that regards.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this. And so it sounds like, and maybe you could paint this picture a bit. So you've had this career in education, and then you've had this like moment where you've wanted to understand a bit more. So tell us about, bridge that gap for us between this was my life and then suddenly I had this moment, or was it sudden, or was it like over time you were grappling with it?
It was, as Mike Tyson says, you make plans and then you get punched in the face. So, or mouth. I think it's you get punched in the mouth is direct quote. So that's what happened to me. I got a really big punch. So I spent my life in education. I was very privileged to go to the top universities in the US. And then I went on to help found one of the most prestigious private schools in the world. And there I was headmistress or principal. I was doing all those things and I was educating our youth. And I thought I had it all figured out. Honestly, I was at the top of my game. I was starting, working in Brazil and China, and we were spreading the word of education. And then all of a sudden, within a year, my husband gets diagnosed with a rare cancer. And 6 months later, my 5-year-old son. 2 different, totally rare cancers. It's like lightning striking twice. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had of being completely unprepared. I would stay up all night thinking, oh my goodness, what if my husband dies? I don't know where the mortgage, I don't even know, where is the mortgage a piece of paper? Like, where do I find it and how do I pay it? I have no idea. I have no idea how to deal with this challenge because a lot of my life has been really smooth. And I felt totally unequipped to deal with what anxiety, I didn't even know what was happening in my body. I had no clue. And I became really passionate about the fact that a lot of us have no clue. And that while I was educating all these students and starting these amazing schools, would they be able to handle what I was handling? And do we ever equip students to understand that sometimes life doesn't go to plan and then not everything has a gold medal or a star, right? And life is more complicated than getting a grade and submitting things. And how can we give students the tools? For example, the other thing I was freaking out in the middle of bed was, what if I get a flat tire with my children and I don't have and Steve's not there, my husband, what am I going to do? And that completely made me stop my entire track and rethink education as a whole. And it first began with this barrel of life skills, because that was the most immediate thing that was bothering me. And I found out the most crazy statistics. 96% of college graduates can't sign their first lease agreement. Here we are, you're adults, you made a paycheck, but they don't know basic contract law. It's never taught to them. They don't have basic, financial literacy, all these things. And you're paying all this money. You might know, a random, theory from a philosopher and you walk out of school feeling, but yet you can't do life. And then that led me down a path of thinking, if life is the ultimate teacher too, and I know that, and I know that value is equal inside the classroom, outside the classroom, can we do better by our students? And when I learned that this is really crazy. Think about this, Bex. 8% of your time in college or higher education is spent in the classroom. That's it. Just 8%. So you're paying this huge amount of cash for this one curated piece that is only 8% of your time. That 92% is kind of happenstance. It's the party, it's this, it's that, which, by the way, has value. There is value in the party, and I want to honor that for every mom
Thank goodness for that. I'm just reflecting on my own journey.
There's real benefits of that, but could we do more? Could we be teaching them these life skills? Could we allow them to have real work experience while they're studying so they know if it's what they want and they can make informed decisions and changing their pathway without being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? Can't we rethink the entire structure? And another thing I started studying was the future economy and workforce and what that means for educators and what we have to be ready for. And one thing that kept me up on those hospital nights was this factoid that we expect the class of 2021 to have 11 distinct jobs before 50 years old. I've been lucky enough that I've been able to stay in my career and it has continued, but that's just not going to be the future workforce that we're anticipating. So the idea that you can do all the years of school and be done is an obsolete model to begin with. We need to allow students flexibility to curate their passions And that's why I became obsessed with taking down higher ed and starting a whole new approach to learning. And that is the MYX, which is only 22 days old out there. But
I was just going to say it's so new, and thank you firstly for sharing that story, and sorry that you had to go through that experience. And at the same time, it says a lot about you that in that moment of what anyone would probably describe as immense trauma, you're also rethinking a whole new model for this obvious other passion that you have, which is education, which is like, how do we actually empower and equip people for life? And your passion is just like pouring out of you. And so the MYX is kind of the child of this epiphany that you had.
Of this trauma, out of this negative, dark space came a lot of light. And you got to make lemons out of lemonade. And I lost 2 years of my life in that hospital, and I wanted to make it back and make sure no one ever feels, not that you'll never have ups and downs, but you feel equipped and you have the skills and the tools. And even if you're not utilizing it, at some point, someone showed you how to change a tire, at some point. I just want people to feel more confident. And it's going to take more. We have to give our students more out of their education, and they deserve it.
Yeah. So tell us about the MYX, and tell us about this vision that you have, this amazing business that you've literally just launched.
So the first thing that was really important was bringing down costs and bringing meaning, right? The things that is missing from classrooms are usually the why. Like, why do I need to know this? You're in that class, you're taking down your notes, you're ready for the test, and it's gone 2 weeks later, right? All that information after the test is gone. There's been some really beautiful things happening, and the MYX could not be more appropriately timed because we are seeing with the rise of online ed, some beautiful things. Now, there are some things that aren't great about online ed, but the beautiful things is it solves to the greatest educational issues we've had is access and quality of instruction. You too, from your living room, can go to Harvard. You can get access to speakers around the world. And it also allows the learner to learn at their own pace, which has always been an issue of higher ed, because once you get in there, you're a freshman and you go to this class, you go to that class, you're shuffled in on this conveyor belt of education, and there is no pause button, there's no rewind. So what MYX does is it leverages that, and we believe that the future of higher education is about choice. That people should be able to curate their courses and make a more determined path. Because what we're finding from the students that we speak to, who are truly the people who understand it most, that they don't really want to take 3 credits of math. They know what they want to do. They want to be a journalist. They want to get straight out into the workplace. They don't want to take 4 years of debt. So what the MYX allows is students to really take the best of online education, which is at a fraction of the cost, and then put the money where it matters most, which is the experience. And what MYX has done is, now that we've leveraged off this credentialing piece, right, this skill base, we were able to do what colleges don't do, is intentionally design culture. So some of the things that we've done is we are really passionate about people finding purpose and that happening along with their education. And so every student in the MYX gets one-to-one life coaching, one-to-one advocate to just talk about you.
Yeah,
so that's one thing we do. We've repurposed culture. Campus cultures are very, there's no Greek life, for example. It's all about inclusivity in one. So in the US, for example, college campuses are most segregated communities. Racially segregated, not by numbers, beautiful by numbers, self-segregated. Why is that? So we've dug deep into that and curated culture around that. In addition, though, the most important thing about the MYX is that you leave with more than a piece of paper, which is losing its value in the marketplace, right? Hiring managers are questioning the value of the degree. At MYX, you have the opportunity to apply your learning in cultures and communities that inspire you. So we're opening 60 global houses around the world where online learners can come be around like-minded change makers, right? Change-making wanting people who are getting life hacks. So we teach a course called Life Hacks. We're learning all that financial literacy, how to change a tire. We even talk about consent and sexuality. Gen Z is having less sex than any generation because of lots of things and porn and their ideas of what sex is, and they withdraw. There's a lot of misinformation. And we tackle all of those things that we know, even what anxiety is, what is it, how it manifests in your body, how to identify it. We give them tools. Then they're out there in the real world in Costa Rica. So if they want to be a social media manager and they get a marketing degree, at MYX, they'll be able to apply that marketing degree while they're studying by doing real world projects. So when they leave, they can say to an employer, yes, I have this credential, I got it, check that box. But in addition, can I show you 4 social media campaigns that I've done in 4 different countries for, different types of consumers and audiences? That is mastery. And what we do on the ground is teach those meta skills that will matter no matter which of those 11 distinct jobs you have, which is communication and collaboration. So that's what the MYX is about. And we're excited.
It is exciting. I mean, you should be excited. It is exciting. And just as you're talking, I'm just thinking, I'm wondering what it is that lights you up so much about this, because you are electric as you're describing this. So what is it that you are really, really hoping that this will contribute in the world, or what is it that makes it, so electrifying for you?
Well, one, I'm a mom. So mom first, and I'm just really excited to offer my child a education that'll make them life ready, so that God forbid if life punches them in the face, right? They have this moment, these skills, these tools to fall back on. So that really electrifies me. And it electrifies me to really bring education to meet tomorrow. With the AI and singularity both happening in the relatively near future, it is all very uncertain. And it's very important that we address this. The educational model we were still working off of was created in the 1600s. A lot has changed. And I'm excited to bring this conversation forward. The good thing is the time is right. Parents want more for their kids, and they're demanding more. And I love to be part of that parent revolution. It takes a mom. I do believe when it comes, if you want something solved, ask a mom. They'll figure it out.
Yes, and I can feel that sort of tenderness and that care for them and for that. I want to pivot slightly, which is about you, because this is your idea and your passion, and you can feel it. And so, what does a whole, fulfilled life mean to you? How does this fit into that vision that you have for yourself?
I mean, the little secret of the MYX and why this is playing into a role is I do believe that if we could educate students that want to give back, that see purpose, that one of these kids is going to cure cancer. As cheesy as that sounds, I believe it in my core. One thing I've learned in the cancer world is no one plays well, and there's a lot of money to be made. It was hard. It's hard thinking back to that time and thinking about watching these doctors fight each other. And at my end of a career, if I could look back and say, one, I have 2 children who are alive and thriving. That would be the ultimate. And that I had just this much to do with helping children find success and fulfillment in their lives. That would be it for me. That's it. I could call my song now. I'm walking out. That would be enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's bold, and yet it's incredibly humble at the same time. I think that's incredible. And so when you say you hope that others find success or fulfillment, what does that mean to you? Because we all have our own sort of definition of that. What would that look like if people were able to do that?
I do believe that everyone needs external validation of being needed. Okay. I do believe that a job or some sort of purpose to wake up. And by the way, that could be being a mother, right? You are desperately needed, right? That child's not going to dress themselves.
As we know.
Yeah, right. Or potty train itself or any of that stuff. I do believe for fulfillment and happiness, you do need to feel successful, and that being validated by a third party. Okay. So a job, feeling like as a young adult that you walk out and someone wants you in their organization, it's not even just about money. It's about feeling purposeful and having, meaning out of your life. That's not just internal. I do believe that humans innately, well, we're social beings and we gain satisfaction and gain a lot of love and happiness by giving it out to others to then receive it. So fulfillment and success isn't about money, but it is about being useful and finding purpose and for third parties validating that. So that's what I hope for these students to find that.
It's interesting because the connection between purpose being doing something like something that where you can use your skills and that is then validated in return is an interesting, like I haven't heard it just sort of described as that. And so how does that maybe differ from what you're seeing today?
So education right now is about like getting your A. It's all about you. It's about you're like, I'm doing my essay and I handed that paper and I get validation about myself. I don't believe that's where fulfillment, meaning, or your purpose is going to be found. And that's why we're so passionate about MYX, about these kids getting out there, working with real people and doing real world projects. So education is very much a journey of me. It needs to be a journey of we. And that's a real difference of mentality, mindset shift that education needs to do more project work. So how can we bring connection, networking, collaboration, communication more into the mainstream framework of education? So that's the past and the we is the future.
Yes, I mean, I as you say, I love the way that you phrase that, less about the me and more about the we. And I was just thinking, like I always say to people, when people resist greatly any thought that they might do something for themselves, some investment in themselves, especially women, especially mums. Oh, I sort of rail against this idea that I'm going to invest in myself. And I always sort of like, well, is there an opportunity to reframe that? Because when you invest in yourself, there is also an investment in others. But if you completely shift that and sort of start to see, I see my education, which is an investment, as less about me and more about we, I think it's a very powerful shift. And like you keep referencing, if we're going to hold on to archaic systems that have been around for, not question them and not rethink, well, what's possible instead of iterating over time? What if we radically jumped out of the pond and started a completely different way of thinking about things? And so for me, it seems like you're a perfect example, a perfect role model for what you're talking about.
Well, thank you. That's like the ultimate compliment. I'm an educator. I like to educate and inspire. I think educators are truly inspiration people because, let's be honest, knowledge is free. You can Google it, but to be able to communicate it and to piece it all together is the real magic. And I'm just happy to be part of it. I'm not alone. That's the good news. Actually, I feel like I have an army. I have the parent. I have the student. I got my team. I have you. Like, we're going to go do this.
Right. Come on, everybody. Let's go. Everyone got this. The revolution has started. Exactly. Jump on board. Oh, I love that. I love that idea. And it sounds, because you describe yourself as an educator, but then in the same breath talk a lot about like your own learnings and your own journey of learning. And so how do you then continue to perpetually learn yourself?
Oh, I learned from the students. You want to know what? Because I'm living life out loud. And I believe life is the ultimate teacher. And every day I am learning, and that education needs to say out loud. The classroom is not where learning happens. I mean, sure, a little. Out there is where you learn. And everyone knows that from when they graduate college and get that first job and realize, oh my goodness, I know nothing. What am I going to do? I know nothing until you get out there in the real world. Let life lead you. And yes, it might punch you in the mouth or the face or in many different areas, but there's purpose. And if you can find the reason behind it, and not that my children or husband had to get cancer for me to, but it was this moment where I realized that I am not educated in the way I'd like to be. And I am the product of some of the best schools in the world. And I run some of the best schools in the world. It was an eye-awakening moment. And so I realized I had to go back to school too. And I sat there and interviewed parents and students and learned why education is not working for most, and found a way out of it.
Yeah. And so you've learned all these things and you've done some amazing things. And as I say, I do think it's courageous. I think it's incredibly courageous to have that moment where you think, gosh, okay, hang on, I'm not equipped and this thing has happened to me and I'm not feeling, and to really examine what it is that you've spent your life's work doing, and then to shift it. So what are you learning about yourself?
I am learning. I have a lot of learning to do. There's days I wake up and like, I just want to hide under the covers. I'm so scared. Full transparency, even though like I've done a lot and this is nothing in comparison to life or death, but I have a lot of learning to do, and the MYX has a lot of learning to do. So I am a student of life. I want to walk that walk. It's super scary founding a company, and there's days where I'm like, what am I doing? But and then all I have to do is talk to a kid though, and I'm done. I'm like, oh, I get it again.
That's what I was just going to say, and I'm just going to thank you for saying it's scary, because it's easy. It's easy not to. It's easy for us to look at you and think, oh my goodness, look at this woman, and for that to be the image that you portray. But thank you for being honest, and thank you for saying I'm scared, and also for connecting that. All it takes is to connect back in with that purpose, to find that thing, because you're about the people that you're educating, right? So you have that conversation and it re-energizes. What else helps you from the place of, I'm scared, I'm on the edge here, to, it's okay, I can do this, one step in front of the other, I'm learning, I'm on a lifelong journey?
When I was in that hospital and I waited in a room I lived in the room of waiting. It was like a year and a half of waiting for the next tests, the next this. It was really fascinating because I got to kind of watch the world go by, and I felt so isolated and lonely. And people would call me and be like, how's it going? And I couldn't tell this story 100 times. So I started writing. I started a blog, which is like, if you knew me, that would be a ridiculous thing to say. I started a blog and I started writing it to no one. It was totally open. And all of a sudden, people started writing me their stories. And I collected all these people, and then people from like high school and people from everyone just showing support, like sending gifts. And they actually created a group of individuals praying and cheering for me and supporting me. Some of them strangers I've never met. My blog was called Nightwing because that was my son's favorite comic book hero who I'd never heard of ever before him. And they called themselves Nightwing. And whenever I get nervous or scared about what I'm doing and disrupting this thing, and who am I to think I can bring education to the masses and give them lessons and curate the experience so it can be transformative in ways that make you feel life ready. Who am I to think that? I always think of this group of people who came around me and gave me this positivity, and I feel like I have an army behind me. So it's amazing. People.
Yeah, I mean, I am a huge part of the reason that this podcast exists is because of that, because of the power of storytelling. And I kept thinking, I'm hearing all of these stories, and what if more people were able to hear these stories and see themselves? What if there's somebody listening that's feeling like you were feeling, like I don't understand how this is still the way that things are, and to know that somebody like you has bravely said, I have even stood at the pinnacle of this, but it's something about it that I know needs to be changed. And that courageous step, because, and even as you're talking, I have still days where I'm scared. For me, this is like change. This is all change theory. It's like, yeah, we're stepping out of our comfort zone. We're doing something that is, beyond what we have done in the past. And that is scary. And yet to continue to get yourself to the edge and say, it's okay, I'll fly. It's okay, I'll build a parachute on the way down. It's okay, I can do this. I've got my people. I've got whatever. That's what we connect to. We connect through stories from people. We learn, in fact, through stories from other people.
100%. A good educator is a storyteller. And it is still the most effective tool in education, is telling in a story. More storytelling should be available, and authentic storytelling. So much youth, the stories they see on these Instagrams and those types of stories are very curated, and it can cause, I believe it has a lot to do with the mental health crisis we're seeing with our youth. But moments like this, where you hear someone's story And I wish we did that more with our youth. I wish Instagram was just full of stories, right? And I think I could really empower and make a lot of people feel better.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And also us all learning and places like the MYX, which will do this, which will train, will give people the tools to look at somebody else's life, and instead of being envious of it, being inspired by it. You know, knowing the difference, right? Knowing the difference between that's where they are and that's they're at chapter whatever, and I'm at the beginning of my story here, and I'm inspired by that. But it's not that I need to be right where they are right now, because I have my own journey, my own path that I want to forge. And so you've got this platform. You've shared already so many ideas for how people can, think about their lives. But what are some of the mantras that you live by? The advice that you would want to share with others?
Yeah, my number one advice is life is the ultimate teacher. So whenever you can, just say yes. When your friend calls you up and says, "I'm going this thing," say yes. Like, get out there, experience life, get out of your comfort zone, travel as much as you can. I have this saying, you can't be found unless you're lost.
Nice.
So you can't find your purpose unless you wander and get really lost. And travel is the quickest route to that, because you are outside your boundaries. There's a different language maybe going on. Like, you're truly a little uncomfortable, and it's hard to do in your in your home base, right? It's hard to get that pushing of boundaries. So you don't have to travel far. You can travel to the next state over. You can travel to the next province, whatever it is. But as much as possible, spend a day getting lost. And I bet you're going to learn some things. And be okay not knowing everything. That would also be a really good advice. Be comfortable saying, I don't know. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of understanding who you are and not pretending to be someone else. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think is really important, especially for our youth, is to remember that it's okay to fail, number one, and that failure is not truly failure. It is a stepping stone to something else, and that life has purpose for you. I truly believe that everyone has some sort of purpose. And if you just listen and maybe step off that hamster wheel and just listen a little bit and go out there and talk to people, you're going to find it. It'll find you. I think it will find you in the end.
Yeah. So for people listening that have children or who have people in their life that they're thinking, I want to shift their experience in education. I want them to step into the school of life as you describe. What is the message?
I would love to say the parent that when deciding your child's next steps, that's a huge decision. This is your child. This is the most important thing in your life. Listen to your kid. They actually have really good ideas, and they know a little bit about themselves. And you know what? If they don't know, that's okay too. So my message to you is, this is the time to get the most value and the best education you can. It is available at a fraction of the cost right in your living room. Take advantage of it. But don't forget that life is the ultimate teacher, and get out there as well. Yeah.
And what I absolutely have loved about this conversation is your passion for honoring that school of life. And also what I heard when you just said that is like, we're all unique. Every single human, every single child is unique. And so you said pushing down a path. Pushing down a path implies it's well-known, well-trodden. It doesn't necessarily play into the uniqueness of who we all are. And I think that idea that you shared earlier about more customized education, more democratized education, more of this access to preparedness for life beyond is such an empowered option and options for people everywhere. So, I mean, thank you so much for your courage. Thank you so much for channeling something that would be in anybody's life incredibly difficult and using it to propel society forward, to make change that's so needed. I'm very, very inspired by your story, and I'm excited to see where the MYX goes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Honestly, that was amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of Not Just Anything for Women Who Want It Whole. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to our weekly podcast and leave us a review. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here with us, and we look forward to having you join again.